some people just aren't meant to play Major League Baseball. They're not meant to play in college. Some of my friends who are coaches that get fired up, I said, hey, just remember, you're coaching accountants. You're coaching, future lawyers. You're not coaching Major League Baseball players.
Yeah.
Make sure these kids enjoy their time because it's limited. And then they get to go to work and raise families, but you want them to look back and say, hey, that was a lot of fun.
Welcome to the Parenting Athletic Kids podcast. My name is Travis Rogers. I'm a mental performance coach and the father of 2 athletic boys. Through this podcast, I hope to deliver actionable strategies that you can implement to help your son or daughter optimize their personal and athletic growth. I also hope these conversations help you enjoy the ride. If you find this podcast useful, please be sure to like, share, and follow. Today's guest is Tim Unroe. Tim is a former professional baseball player who spent 5 seasons in the major leagues. Tim has 3 kids. His oldest son, Riley, is a professional baseball player who is currently in AAA baseball. In today's podcast, Tim discusses his focus, the things he did well, and the things he didn't do so well while raising his athletic kids. Here we go. Tim, welcome to the podcast. Really excited about this conversation. Heard that you're a great storyteller, and I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit better and to know your kids as well. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Travis. I'm happy to be here and excited about what you're doing here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think you're going to be helpful to parents with some stories and some things that you did raising your young athletes through the process. So let's jump into it, Tim. Tell us a little bit about your sports background. Let's start with that. I don't know anything about that. So let's start there and then lead that into your kids a little bit.
Yeah, I did play Major League Baseball for 5 seasons. It's kind of a crazy story because I never intended to play baseball. And my senior year in high school, one of my buddies just dared me to go out for the baseball team. And I fought him tooth and nail and we both went out for the team, and I had a good year and ended up getting a scholarship to a junior college and had a couple good years there. Got another scholarship to a university at Division II. And and then next thing you know, the Milwaukee Brewers drafted me, and a couple of years later, I was in the major leagues, and I was playing first base, and I just kind of looked around and thought, how did this happen?
Wow.
Very unusual story. But somebody saw something good in me, and they just kept helping, and then ended up going out to Japan for a year, which was a great experience for me and my kids and wife, and so I feel very blessed to have played 10 years professionally. Like I said, it was never the dream, but I just took it one day at a time, and here we are. I get to talk to you now.
Oh, yeah. I think you had a few more highlights than that. So that's incredible. Like, were you into other sports through high school, through youth sports?
Youth sports, I played Little League Baseball. And it's kind of a funny story because I was pretty good, as a little leaguer, but I just did it for fun. And we had a travel coach back in Illinois, and he was really intense. And honestly, he scared me as a kid, and I never wanted to play for him. But when Little League season was over and then travel ball was starting, he was trying to recruit me, and I just kept telling my mom, this guy scares the crud out of me. I don't want to play for him. And some of the words he used in our meeting made me never want to play baseball again. So I think I was maybe 12, 13 years old, and I just stopped playing.
Wow.
And I'd never intended to play baseball again. And like I said, then my senior year came around, and my buddy was like, we always messed around and, with our friends at the field and played this game called pitcher, batter, outfield with 3 guys, and just silly games that kids play. And I played basketball and, at the local elementary basketball court and just stuff like that recreationally. But yeah, when my buddy dared me to go out for the team. He still brags to this day that he's the reason for my career.
Well, it sounds like he certainly played a role.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is don't play sports until you're senior in high school, and then just play down at the park, and great things will happen. You'll end up playing professionally. So
Well, I think the bigger moral is just take it one day at a time.
okay,
And just
yeah,
be good today.
love
And
it,
things will
love
work.
love it. All right, well that's an incredible story. So tell us about your kids a little bit. Let's dive into them.
Okay. My oldest son is Riley Unroe, and he plays in AAA for the Detroit Tigers. He's been playing now for 11 seasons. So he got drafted in 2013, second rounder out of high school with the Tampa Bay Rays. Got another son who's 26 now, left-handed pitcher in high school. He hated sports, but was very good at it and just fought tooth and nail not to play. So I think he only played 1 or 2 seasons and had no interest. And then my youngest is my daughter, Lauren. She's 20, just turned 23. And she has kind of a funny story too, because she, her brother being a second round draft pick, her dad being a former major leaguer, she never wanted to play sports because she didn't want to have to live up to the name. And so a lot of intimidation, a lot of nervousness for her. And one day we were in the kitchen cooking, and me and my wife, my daughter, and we're just having fun and cooking a meal. And my daughter's pretty feisty. I raised her to be tough. I didn't want any boys to take advantage of her, so she's a tough girl. So we're rolling up towels and snapping them on each other, and cracking each other with them. And I got her good with one, and she got so mad that she picked me up by the chest, my shirt, lifted me off the ground, and set me on the kitchen counter. I'm 6'3", 225 pounds. And she was a freshman in high school. And yeah, I was like, honey, what in the world just happened right there? And I go, you are playing sports. And she's like, no, I'm not, Dad. And I was the dad that, nobody wants to be. I'm like, I'm forcing you to play sports. I'm like, what you just did right there is ridiculous. And I go, we have to at least see. And so I signed her up for a softball team. And I know a ton of people out here in Arizona that run softball programs. And she went out for all these tryouts and nobody would take her. She was so bad, and nobody wanted to take a chance on developing. And so I found a guy that I didn't know. He didn't know us. And he looked at her and he says, I can kind of see something there. He's like, I'll take a chance. And 2 years later, she was the top offensive player in the state. She led high school in every offensive category. She went to the first practice and she's like, I hate it, Dad. I'm not going back. I'm like, honey, I'm going to make you play one season. After the one season, if you don't like it, I'll never bother you again. But you got to play one season. So she's second practice, she starts to like it. Third practice, she falls in love with it. And now she's tough and she's arrogant and she can hit. And one of the best stories I have of her is we're indoors in a batting cage, and I'm throwing batting practice underhand to the softball team, and she's talking trash, and so I start trying to really throw hard underhand, and I can only throw so hard underhand. I don't know how these people do it. And she's like, "Come on, old man, is that all you got?" And so I took the softball and threw it overhand, as just about as hard as I could from a very short distance, and she destroyed that ball. That flipped and walked out of the cage. We laugh about that story today. Every time we get together, we laugh about that. But yeah, she actually turned out to be probably the best athlete in our family.
Wow.
Yeah.
What led you to push so hard to get her into that? Like, did you just know yeah, I don't want to lead you any direction on that. I mean, what was the driving force behind you making her go out there?
I was never going to push her to do anything. I just wanted to be the supportive dad. Who's my only daughter, so she's my little peanut, I called her. And but she was tough, and she was really tough. And when she's the youngest, and when guys would mess with their older brother, she'd be the first to be ready to fight.
Mm.
And I'm like, that's just not normal. She's very, very competitive. And I'm like, I gotta see where that goes. I know, I understand how nervous she was, and I told her, I said, you don't like it, I'll never bother you again, but just try it one time. And she fell in love with it. She actually got a full scholarship to go to college, and she turned it down. She said, I had my fun in high school. Now I want to go do other things with my life, and never play it again. And we're all good with it. And she's got a great life today, and super proud of her. And it was a fun little journey. It was short, but it was fun.
So it was just about trying to get her out and seeing how she would compete and develop that competitive nature through sports was kind of your
Yeah.
mindset on it, or you were just like, I know she could be really good, I want to watch this, or
Just actions through her whole life. She was athletic. You can see athleticism just in daily movements, in running or riding a bike or a scooter or whatever. You can see an athlete. And then you can, on the other side, you can see, and then there's not an athlete there. But everything she did, she was athletic, and competitive and strong. And I just thought, I don't know if I could sleep at night if I don't at least just see what's in there. You know what I mean? Let's find out. And I'm glad I did, because she's got incredible memories, and great friends, and all of her coaches, that she played for, we're all good friends now. And the funny thing is all the people that didn't give her a shot initially, when she became good, were calling me saying, "Hey, we want her on our team."
yeah,
And I'm like, too late. We found our guy. You know what I mean?
yeah.
The guy who took her under the wing is the guy we're going to be loyal to.
How did you find that person? What was that like? Like you were just knocking on doors and it kind of got lucky to find. So I'm assuming this was like a hitting coach, or not somebody who runs a team necessarily, but tell me a little bit more about this person.
Yeah, actually does run. He did run a program here
Okay.
in Arizona. And I didn't know him, but I was doing hitting lessons in an indoor facility. And he would come in with his team or whatever. And he was paying one day, and I was at the register, and I said, "Hey, this is what I got going on with my daughter." He's like, "Yeah, take a look." And really nice guy. And even today, that was, I don't know how many years ago, but even today, we're really great friends, um, with him and his family. But yeah, he gave her a tryout. And it turns out, I didn't know this until years later, but when my daughter Lauren was going through those first tryouts to all the people I knew, and they were like, "Hey, we don't want her," she's like, "Dad, I was tanking those tryouts. I didn't want to be there. I was trying to be as bad as I could so they didn't want me."
Really?
Yeah.
How did you ever? I mean, how did you ever get her to? It sounds like it was the last thing in the world that she wanted to do. Like, how did she ever cross that bridge and be like, "All right, I'll even show up for this first day of practice"? It was just you saying you don't have to do it forever. Like, what?
Yeah, well, like I said, I did force her. I said, "You're on the team. I've already signed up. I've already paid. You have practice tonight." And I think a lot had to do with it, with the girls on the team. Like, a lot of the girls were really friendly to her right away, and she liked the friendship. And being athletic, she was watching these girls who were supposed to be the better players on the team, and she's like, "I can do that," you
Yeah.
know. And her competitiveness took over, and she's like, "Yeah, I can do what they're doing." And they're nice people, and they hung out. We vacationed with all of them, and it
Right.
just turned into a beautiful family.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool. That's yeah. So far, you've had two stories that you don't hear every day. Well, tell us about Riley a little bit. So, what was so he's the oldest and the one that's played 11 years professionally. What was his kind of youth sports stuff like? Since you were a baseball guy, was that just like a natural thing for him to get into? Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, with Riley, he was old enough to remember me playing. He was in locker rooms after the game, He would go out with like Mark DeRosa used to pitch to him on the field after the game, and all the other players were really nice to him, and so he kind of fell in love with it. And like any kid, you want to be like your dad, right? And most kids just want their dad to be proud of them, and so you kind of follow in those footsteps, and it's what I knew and was able to teach him. And so from a very early age, he was getting instruction that, most kids wouldn't get. Um, so yeah, he fell in love with it right away. I think he knew from the time that he could make his first decision that he wanted to be a baseball player like his dad. And, yeah, we just, we fed it, and, our family, we're very, how should I say it? We love the Lord. Our relationship with Jesus Christ is what drives us in life. And, so that came first. Is his character came first, and the way he treated people. And so as he got older, he was always that kid that was always the best athlete in school, or whatever school he was in. But he was also the kid who would protect the weaker kids from bullies, and I think that's what he was remembered for most, maybe in elementary school and junior high and even in high school. Is he would take kids under his wings that were kind of outcasts and say, "Hey, come eat lunch with us," and now they're eating with the best athlete on the team, the nice kid, whatever. And to me, that is probably one of the most special things about him. Is his name's Riley, and growing up, always had this big heart where he cared for everybody. He have a mature conversation at 3 years old with adults. And his nickname was Smiley Riley because he always smiled at people. He was always friendly. He was everyone's best friend. So, yeah, he's just an incredible human being. He's still like that today. And he, we actually, I got a decent story here. I actually wrote a book about it, but I didn't publish it. When he was coming up through Little League, and then we got into club baseball, my ego was getting in the way, and I didn't realize it. And I'm coaching every level that he's playing in, and I'm thinking like a major leaguer. And so, and he's my son, so he's kind of an extension of me, and in my eyes anyway. And we have another coach in this club team. He's still in Major League Baseball, Kip Thag. He is the scouting director for the Texas Rangers, and his kids were on the team. And I remember one day, I think my son was 12 years old, and there was an easy play at shortstop. He comes in and he clanks it, makes an error. And I get on him. And I'm like, come on, dude, you got to make that play. And, the whole disappointed tone and whatnot. And, and then Kip pulls me off to the side and does something that I'm eternally grateful. He says, "Hey, you're too hard on your kid." And I would step back and I said, "I am?" And I just sat there for a second, and I started replaying how I talk to him, what I say to him, and how after games, I would talk about the game to him, and more in disappointment than anything. And I stopped for a second and I go, "Man, you're right." I'm like, I'm that dad. I never wanted to be that dad. You know what I mean? And I'm that dad. And if he didn't say that, I don't know what would have happened. But so I reevaluated everything. I said, I went and prayed about it. And I said, I just want to be encouraging. I want him to really love the game of baseball, not because of me, because he wants to love the game of baseball. And so we would have these tournaments like an hour away. And previously on our rides home, I would be like, "What were you thinking there? Why would you do that?" And so after a kid puts me in my place and I reevaluate, pray about it, the drives home were much different. I made sure that the first 30 minutes of that ride, I told him everything I was proud of him for, the little things, the high fives in the dugout, the encouragement to his teammates, the way he listened to his coaches, the way he hustled. I mean, anything I could think of that I was proud of that I never pointed out before, I made a point to point that out. And then the last 30 minutes, I would say, if you want to do something better, here's what you can do. And then he would talk about things that he would want to do better. And we would have discussions about it. And I got rid of all the disappointment. And I'm telling you, from that day on, not only did our relationship just boom, his playing ability went through the roof because he wanted one thing. He wanted to make dad proud. And now I was proud and I was letting him know. And there was no more disappointment. Failure happens for sure. I mean, you're never going to get away from it. But how you react to it, it's a make or break for me. And so fast forward his senior year, he has 20 scouts at every game. And, he's kind of the guy. And so he gets drafted in second round, and USA Today reporter comes out and does an interview with him. So it's me and my son and the guy doing the interview. And I step away from the interview for a little bit, and they're sitting in the dugout, and I'm kind of over by third base. I can still hear, but I don't want to be a distraction. And the guy says, was there a lot of pressure having a dad that was a major league? He's like, no, that's my dad. I don't think of him as a major leaguer. He's my dad. And he goes, well, what was the best thing about having a dad that played in the major leagues? And he paused for a second. And he goes, the car rides home. And I was like, wow. If my buddy doesn't put me in my place, he doesn't have that answer. He may not be sitting in that dugout, as a second rounder. And, it just hit hard. And I was like, man, I am so thankful that a buddy would come over and say, hey, you're too hard on your kid. And as you know, that could go one or two ways. That could either go really well, like it did with us, thankfully, or I could have gotten angry and had my ego get in the way again and say, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about, and ruin that relationship. So, as tough as it was for Kip to do that, again, I couldn't be more thankful.
That is an awesome story, and so many great nuggets in there. That's incredible. In my opinion, I think, well, no, I it's not an opinion. I know it to be true that parents want the best for their sons and daughters, and yet we go to the negative stuff so often in the car rides, before games, dropping off, whatever, in our conversations. Besides that amazing story and walking us through that, like if a parent doesn't have, it's about creating awareness in my mind. So you had Kip who helped you become aware of that. Without that, who knows? If a parent doesn't have the awareness of what they're doing, I mean, I think your story alone will make parents sit back and be like, okay, how am I doing this? So that's more awareness. Are there anything else that you would say, like, take a look at this, take a look at that, talk to your kid about are they enjoying any thoughts that you have on that?
Yeah, my big thing for parents and kids, I know every dad wants their kid to be the next Cody Bellinger. We all want that. Is it realistic? Probably not. I mean, that's very rare. But I think what dads or parents need to think about is when that kid gets older, his memory of that time playing baseball is either going to be positive or negative. The kid may never play baseball after high school or even in high school, but your relationship's going to go on for the rest of both of your lives. So for me, I want to make sure that my kids see me as a positive role model and see me as somebody who's in their corner all the time. And, as long as they're giving their best, I mean, what more could you ask for? I mean, how can you be disappointed if they're giving everything they got? Some people just aren't meant to play Major League Baseball. They're not meant to play in college, some of my friends who are coaches that get fired up, I said, hey, just remember, you're coaching accountants, you're coaching, future lawyers, you're not coaching Major League Baseball players. Make sure these kids enjoy their time because it's limited, and then they get to go to work and raise families, but you want them to look back and say, hey, that was a lot of fun. And then, on the flip side too, they're going to have kids, and how are they going to treat their kids? Are they going to treat them, with disappointment or whatever? Or are they going to want them to be, encouraging? And maybe that's where we need to get to is to, train these kids now on how parents should act so that when they have kids, they know. If all the parents are crazy now, what's to stop these kids from growing up and being a crazy parent as well? So we as parents need to be, I think, better role models.
Really, really good. I think there is that line, certainly dads, and probably some moms too, where we think that being hard, pushing that hard, trying to motivate, trying to drive, and generally that becomes negative conversations. You can do this better, you can do that better. So your point of, is that how you want your kid to raise their kid is a great one, super important. But I think there's more to it. Like, that's just not the best way to help your kid achieve whatever it is they want to achieve either. But we go to that for some reason. And any thoughts on, like it doesn't make sense, but that's what we do. You can be better. You can be better. You can be better. And I love all the reasons you said not to do that. The relationship piece as we get older, and I want my sons to know I'm there for me forever. And I want them to be good parents, good coaches, whatever it might be. But also in the here and now, it's not the best way to go either. Any thoughts on that? Like, did you see something? I mean, maybe telling a story or seeing what you saw from Riley after you made the change and stayed positive and had good car rides home. What did you see different in him? Maybe that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. The other thing I did too, I'm glad you asked that, is I get into psychology. Like, I listen to Tony Robbins, and I listen to why people do what they do. And that fascinates me, you know what I mean? Because knee-jerk reactions of anger, I want to know why somebody does that. And other people don't. Other people are more analytical and they'll break it down. To me, the human brain is completely fascinating. So a couple of things that I learned, one from Tony Robbins, the other one from my wife. Tony Robbins talks about this thing called peak state. And in baseball, how I used it when I was teaching kids is every kid gets nervous at the plate or pitching or whatever situation. The nerves take over and you start to think and doubt. And you're like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm nervous, I'm scared. So what Tony Robbins teaches is that, people say you use that negative energy to boost your performance. Well, a way to do that is to ask a kid very, very specific questions. What was your favorite moment on a baseball field? Tell me the moment. And a kid will say, let's just say, for example, I hit a home run in Little League. And they're like, okay, was it sunny out that day? Yeah, it was sunny. Were your parents there? Yeah. Where were they sitting? And just ask them questions and make them go through every detail. What did it feel like when you hit the ball? Do you remember making contact with it? Which part of the fence did it go over? Center field, left center? And they remember it just vividly. I mean, just go through this thing and they remember like it just happened. What were your teammates doing? Were they celebrating? Did you high five? What did it feel like when you got those high fives? Did you look to your parents? Were they smiling? And now this kid went from nervous to peak state. Now he's like, I can't wait to do that again. That was the greatest feeling I've ever had on a baseball field. And now the nerves are gone and the excitement takes over. And I've done that in my coaching career with kids, and it's amazing what that does. It changes their whole perspective on a bat, on a game, on a pitch, And the other thing too, that my wife taught me, and this is, I thought she was crazy when she said it, but it actually works. Speak things into existence. What you want to happen, speak it into existence. So, for example, I was doing hitting lessons with kids, and the first time I tried this, and I'm telling this young kid, he's probably 10 years old, to do something different, and he just won't do it. And my wife gets in my head and she's speaking it into existence. So he takes like 10 more swings off of a tee. And I said, "Hey, Bobby, great job doing what I asked you to do. You're doing it perfectly." And then I would tell him what he was doing. "You're doing that perfectly. I couldn't imagine you doing it any better." And because he got that praise and he was like, "Wow, I really am." And he heard me say what I wanted him to do again. He started doing it and he never stopped. And I was like, that's crazy. That's crazy that just happened. And, rather than say, "Come on, Bobby, you're not doing it. You're not doing it." I told him he was doing it. And then he started doing it because he got the praise.
Amazing. You should be a mental performance coach. Those are, seriously, those are incredible techniques for maximum performance, optimizing performance, or at least heading in that direction. It's just so interesting that, and I am a mental performance coach, but don't know where this kind of negative feedback, why we think it's the right way to go. Maybe it's easier to point out the problems than the solutions. That's probably part of it. And in the moment, you can see the problem. And as adults, we might know the solution, but that doesn't mean that our son or daughter at 12 years old or whatever knows the solution or how to get through that. So those two techniques that you're talking about are incredible techniques, parents.
Well, let me ask
you, onto that.
When you were growing up playing baseball, were the coaches, disappointed and kind of, my point is, did you learn how to act as a coach from those guys growing up? I think that's where it comes from. I think that's where the negativity comes from, because back in the day, men that raised us were more manly. You know what I mean? They did manly stuff. They hit themselves in the thumb with a hammer just for fun, But it was a different world. You know what I mean? And you could, your neighbor would spank your kid if he did something wrong. It was okay. The principal would spank your kid if he got out of line, and it was okay.
Yeah.
We're living in a different world now. I think, we're kind of trained to react a certain way as a coach, because that's how we saw our coaches and gym teachers or whatever. So, that would be my theory. Is it's ingrained in us to just be, our knee-jerk reaction is, hey, Coach so-and-so back in the day would yell at us and we would run hard.
Yeah.
So I'm going to yell.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking about the next generation and trying to pass that down. You're probably exactly right. I think as you talk through that, I think the coaches back in our day, and there are still some of them are still out there, think that by yelling at kids or by accentuating the negative, it's going to toughen the kid up. Yeah. Which to a certain extent does. They can become more resilient through that. But the only way they're going to do that is if they have a certain level of purpose and passion to begin with.
Yeah.
If you get them at an age where it's like, I'm not sure, like you were when you were, playing Little League and then going to go into travel, and you had this coach that sounds like not very friendly. Nah, I'm good. I won't do that. And that's what's happening a lot now at 12, 13, 14 years old. Like, I don't need this frustration in my life. I'll go do something else.
Yeah.
So I think I'll tell a quick story. Like my first engagement with a coach like that was when I was in college. Just a yell or a tough, trying to build resilience. That's the good way I'm gonna talk about it. Like he wanted to toughen up players, so he did it through yelling. And luckily, at that age, We were all passionate about what we were doing. It was even hard on me at the time because I had never gone through anything like that. Um, but at that point, you're like a college player, and you're like, this is what I love to do. Like nobody's going to take that away from me, basically. But at 13, 14 years old, forget about whatever age. So
Yeah. You reminded me of another story when I was in college at the university. It was a Division II, a private Catholic college, Lewis University, out of just west of Chicago. And I wasn't Catholic, so I didn't understand. Sisters are teaching the class, and all of the religion classes you got to take, and I was there to play baseball. I wanted to get an education, but I had dyslexia before it was cool. So I was, I had a hard time comprehending and reading and all of that stuff. And I was trying my best and, whatever. So my coach, who was the dean of students at the time, he called me in his office and he's like, hey, I'm looking at your grades and you look like you're struggling. And I said, man, coach, I'm just not getting it. I'm up all night studying and I just can't retain this stuff. It just won't stay. I'm it's like a jumbled mess in my head. And he goes, well, are you here to get an education or are you here to play baseball? And I knew what he wanted me to say, and I sat there for a second. I said, coach, I respect you too much to lie to you. I can't get it in the classroom. I'm just not getting it. I said, I want to play baseball. And that was the day I verbally committed to what I wanted to do with my life.
sure.
Before it was just a hope, I'm doing well in college. Maybe I hope to go on. And I think that day, making that verbal commitment, I'm all in, was a big step. And so he goes, well, just so you know, the rest of your teammates are here to get an education. They're not going on to play pro ball. And he goes, so if you want to play pro ball, you got to work twice as hard as them. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I go, you know what? Push me as hard as you can, whatever it takes. I don't care. I'll do it. I'm like, just get me there. And so he goes, okay. He goes, I don't want to hear any crying. I don't want to hear any complaining. You're either in or you're not. And I said, I'm in. Let's go. So, we would have our normal practices and all of my teammates would leave and they would go do their homework and stuff. And I didn't get to leave. I was running on that field and the lights were off and I'm out there by myself and I got to run, a certain amount of time and just kept doing this day after day after day. And, extra time in the weight room, extra hitting. I was doing twice the work everyone was. And I remember one day running on that field, the lights are off, he's gone. And he's like, if you cheat it, you're cheating yourself. He's like, I don't have to be here to watch you. So he left and I didn't want to cheat the system. I wanted to play. And so I remember running and my whole body was numb. I couldn't feel anything. I didn't know if I could take another step, but I knew that if I stopped, it was over. That dream was over. I would be cheating it and we didn't deserve it. And I felt as long as I did everything he told me to do, I deserved to play pro ball. And so one more step. And I did it. And so when I ended up getting drafted in the 28th round. I was told between the 3rd and 5th round. So, the 28th round was a little bit of a shocker, but still happy. I got a $2,500 signing bonus and I had to pay off my $2,000 credit card bill. So went into pro ball at $500. And we're in Montana and we're in the locker room in rookie ball. And all of the guys are going around the room. Coach says, hey, stand up, say your name, where you went to school, all that stuff. So I'm one of the last guys to go and stand up. I'm Tim Unroe, went to Lewis University. And our first rounder, he signed for $500,000 and went to Florida State University. And I said, Lewis University. And he goes, Lewis University? What is that, a goat farm? And everyone laughed, and I instantly got angry and a little chip on my shoulder. And I waited for the room to calm down a little bit. And I said, I may have gone to Lewis University. You may have gone to Florida State. I said, so either you did something wrong or I did something right because we're both in the same room today. And I said, but either way, I'm going to kick your A every day on that field. I said, because if you're the man, all I got to do is be better than you, and I become the man. And 2.5 years later, I was in the major leagues, and he never made it. And he's still a friend. I'm not mad at the guy. I actually am, again, very thankful that he did that, because it did put a chip on my shoulder to say, the work's not over just because you got here. Oh, now you got to compete against these guys.
That's cool.
So it was a cool experience. Even the negativity in baseball can be used as a positive if you allow it.
Love it. Love it. Tell us a little bit. So Riley, 11 seasons, professional baseball, and any tips into the major leagues during that time, or what's his? That's a long time, right? In professional baseball, maybe tell us a little bit about that, like his mindset through this, and what has allowed him. I think, some things probably developed as a youth, and you've talked about them, like leaning into the positive self-talk stuff. Like, what's allowed him to keep going, keep pushing, stay resilient through it? That's a lot of stuff there, but
No,
take it where you want.
It's 11 years is a long time, especially if you haven't broken into the major leagues yet. Pretty rare to play that long without being in the major leagues. I think his resiliency is he's a switch hitting kind of middle infield utility guy, so he's valuable to a team. I think the reason that he probably hasn't played in the major leagues is he's a people pleaser, and if a coach tells him to do something, he's very literal. He'll do exactly what the coach says. And sometimes, coaches don't have all the answers. They're throwing out suggestions to see if they stick. Here, try this, try that, and it may not be the fix. It may not be the thing that a player needs. And a player has to be mature enough to know that either that's helping me or it's not, and either throw it away or to keep it or to use parts of it or whatever. I think that's how successful players become successful, is they learn the little things that help and they keep it. And all the other stuff, it's in one ear, out the other. I can't use it. But Riley, he wants to please his coaches. So if they tell him to do something, he's going to do it and try to be successful, whether it works for him or not. And so we've had a lot of talks over the seasons, and I think he's now grown into, he's 29 now, so he's grown into knowing exactly what works for him. And last year he had a really good year. We thought he was going to get a call up to the major leagues. He was, all his numbers were good enough to get there. It just didn't happen. And a lot of it is right place, right time, especially at 29. He always has this positive outlook. It just has to keep hanging in there, and it'll happen. And he's a fighter. He's a grinder, and he's the kind of guy on a team, like his faith is very important to him. He'll lead teams in baseball chapel on Sundays. He'll actually lead the chapel time, and he's always that positive, encouraging. I think one of the downfalls is he maybe is not as competitive as his sister and as his dad. He likes to compete, but that old adage, when they're down, step on their throat kind of thing. I don't think he has that in him. He's very compassionate. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but I do believe with all my heart that this 2025 season could be it. And we'll see. And if anybody's watching this and they're prayer warriors, pray for Riley.
So I have two questions out of that. So, and I think these are important skills to try to help our sons and daughters develop. And I want to get your thoughts on this. So you talked about how Riley, like, there's so many good things, like a people pleaser, and listening to what your coaches say. These are good things, but on the other hand, you have to know be able to navigate what is actually useful to you versus just noise and clutter and things that aren't helping. Any thoughts on how he could have developed that earlier, or is it just, a process that develops at different places? So I'm gonna speak to this. My older son, who's at the University of Michigan, he's a senior. Same, a lot of these things you're talking about, same things. So he went to ASU, and whatever the coaches told him, like he was trying that, and kind of forgot about his strengths and to focus on certain strengths. And again, we want kids listening to coaches, but how do you, can that be defined? Like exactly what you should and shouldn't listen to? Not listen, you listen to everything your coaches are saying, but what you're actually going to try to use and take in. Yeah, the thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I learned it in my pro career early on when I had a hitting coach, and he was very analytical, and I'm a field player. It has to feel right for me to do it. And he was telling me to do something, and it was like he was speaking a different language. I'm like, I have no idea what you're even talking. And then I would just go in and hit a ball, and if I hit the ball in the barrel, he would go, "That's what I'm talking about." I'd be like, "What?" I couldn't do anything that you were saying. And that's when I realized, I'm like, as long as you hit the ball in the barrel, every hitting coach is going to be like, "That's what I'm talking about." You know,
Yeah.
they just want you to have success. I mean, the
Yeah.
bottom line is hit the ball in the barrel, right? They're trying to guide you to get to that spot, and you're trying to find that spot. So, um, I don't know. I don't know if it's like what you can do with kids. It's a great question, and something that I would love to kind of dig in more to is how to get a kid to understand what to listen to and what not to listen to, and how to trust their own intuition and their own physical ability. Because hitting is not a cookie cutter thing. Everybody's different. It's a different feel. It's a different approach. It's a different mindset. None of our brains work the same. None of our bodies work the same, and they're similar, but they don't work the same. So I guess that's what makes hitting so difficult, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's outside of hitting, as parents from other sports are listening to this. It's, I think one of the ways to navigate this for young athletes, and again, it's important to be open to advice and coaching and all these things, but definitely at a certain point, especially as they get a little bit older, understanding their strengths and writing down their strengths. This is what I'm really good at. And if a coach comes in with other things and other advice, you can play with it, but is it lending towards your strengths? And it doesn't mean you don't focus on things that you can get better at, but are the drills or the techniques or the things that the coach is sharing helping you to again strengthen your strengths? I think, and I'm just going to speak from personal experience with my older son. He was and I just did a podcast with him, so he talks about this. Always wanting to get better. So anything a coach would say, he would take it as, "Ooh, this is going to make me better. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that." And again, there's some strength in that. But what he has forgotten about oftentimes is what he's really good at. And when you step into a game, you better be aware of what you're really good at, because there's power in that and there's confidence in that. If you're always chasing development, you say to yourself, "I'm not quite good enough yet. I'm not quite there yet." So I think that's something for parents to make sure our sons and daughters are aware of. Know that you're really good at this, and this. Lean into those things. In practice, work on other stuff. Try to develop even those things that you're good at more. Work on your weaknesses when you step into the game. And this has to be true at the professional level, where mostly they're playing, right? Like not so much development through practice at that point. It's game, 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 game. Well, let's step into the game knowing what we're really good at and focusing on those strengths. Do you think that's the only thing that comes to my mind as kids are trying to navigate that? What should I try? What shouldn't try? All those kinds of things.
Yeah, I love what you said right there about if you're always in development mode, you're not good enough. That hits hard right there. That's a very good point. And when you lean into your strengths, you are good enough. That's a great mindset to have. And it made me think of Riley because he's always working on development. And so maybe his mentality is, I'm not good enough yet. I'm not perfect at this. And it's leaning into his strength. So thank you right there for helping me because I'm going to take that into our training.
Well, yeah. And I came to this a while back when I was working with a dad and his son at the same time on mental performance. And this is a baseball coach dad and his son plays ball. And they would go to the cage, right, and spend an hour working on the weaknesses, staying inside the ball, hitting the ball the other way, doing all these things. And then they show up to the field and he thinks I need to do A, B, and C to be successful rather than just see ball, hit ball. And so what I talked to this dad about, spend 20, 25 minutes working on the skills to develop that will help his swing, and then spend the rest of the time smashing baseballs.
Yeah.
And talking about how good that feels and what he's doing with his movements that make that feel so good, and looking at the result and empowering the son to step on the field with that kind of confidence rather than the other. So that's where that kind of all started a few years ago with me. And I would do the same thing with my kids, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you did it with Riley. Like, this is what we have to work on. This is how we're going to get better. And just talking to my son on this podcast I did with him, he talked about the youth sports experience and how much he loved the days where it was just, we're out here smashing baseballs, hard hit ball competition, home run competition, right? And then that takes it onto the field, and they're like, to your point, you talked about earlier, like, let's just kind of see how hard I can hit this thing and have some fun with that. So,
yeah, I think you just meshed analytics and feel all in one in a training. And that, honestly, that's gold right there for a baseball player. Because Riley's very analytical. I'm a feel guy. So when we do go to a batting cage and we start hitting, he's thinking about his back hip, his ankle, his scaps, and and I'm like, just hit the ball. We don't have the same hitting language, so it's at times we don't mesh. So I really like what you said right there. Is be analytic the first 15 minutes and figure it out, and just smash, because when he hits a ball good, he wants to talk about it. I'm like, stop talking, do it again.
Right. I mean, there can be some, like, and I always go back to the mental piece. Like, what were you thinking right before you smashed that? Were you thinking all these things about analytics and scap load and all? The hard part now is it's gotten so much harder than I think in our day, where there was no cameras and no analytics and no, Twitter breaking down the swing. You got to coil your hip. And in all sports, this is the case now. And kids, I mean, I see it coaching at Hamilton High School. They'll come to me afterwards and like, what did you see? And I'm like, I can't actually see inside your brain. I don't care what your body's doing.
Yeah.
Like, you already have a swing coach, a hitting coach. You can work on that. When you come out here, like, how does it feel? Do you have positive thoughts in your mind? Do you have a good approach, a good plan? You talked earlier about, I can't remember exactly, but you started to work with beyond that 12 years old spot with Riley. I don't remember exactly what you said, but what you were describing to me was like being in flow or being in the zone. That's what I talk to kids about. What does it feel like? You were talking about how you would, a kid would be really nervous or anxious. and you talk to them about, you remember when it was really good and you hit that home run and the sun was shining and your parents were in the stands. That's getting them into a flow state, into the zone we talk about in sports. That's where I want Riley to be. That's where I want my sons to be. That's where I want kids at Hamilton. That's where I want a 12-year-old to be when they step on the field. And you can't do that if you're just worried about how you're going to get better, what your SCAP is doing, or what your parents are talking about in the stands, or if you're worried about them. So I went off on a little tangent there, but I love it. That's what when you were talking about that, I was like, he's talking about being in the zone right now. That's so sweet, you know. And you weren't saying that to to Riley or the other players, but that's exactly where you were taking them.
Yeah. I got another quick story about the zone. And when I got drafted, I was dating my wife now back in high school. We were high school sweethearts. And when I went off to Lewis University, her dream was to go on a missions trip for her church, which she did. And she went off to New Zealand, Tonga, Western Samoa, and she was on a ship and gone for 6 months. And I was head over heels in love with her from the minute I met her. So I knew she was going to be my wife one day, but I didn't feel good enough for her, So I was always trying to prove that I was good enough. You're making a good decision. I'm husband material. She's an angel. So when I got drafted, I was out in Montana, and she had come back from her mission trip. That she's in Wisconsin, and I'm in Montana. So her parents were nice enough to rent this van, drive across country to come see me play. And they get to Montana, and the only thing I can think about is I just want to prove to her that I'm a professional baseball player and I'm going to be able to do this and take care of her. And so they were there for a week, and I hit 7 home runs that week. And when she was getting ready to leave, my manager went up to her and said, "I will pay for you to stay here the rest of the year." And I ended up, and it was a half season. I ended up hitting 16 home runs, but I wasn't thinking about scap loads. I wasn't thinking about any mechanical anything. All I was thinking about is if I hit this ball hard enough, she's going to love me. She's going to want to be my wife. You know what I mean? I'm going to get a life that I really want. And she did that,
Yeah.
And so my whole motivation had really nothing to do with baseball. Baseball was just a vehicle to get me to the life I wanted. And I found a way to use it. So hitting the ball hard can get you the life you want. So there it is, kids.
Yeah, I'm not sure how parents can lean into that one with their 13-year-old. Like, start thinking about the boyfriend or girlfriend you want to have down the road. But it does make me think. It took you away from, like you said, the scap load, the stats, and you had this bigger purpose. And we talk a lot about that with mental performance. You have to understand your purpose, and usually a grand purpose, a really great purpose, is something bigger than what you do on the field. I mean, so what you did on the field was correlated to what your purpose was, but it took you outside of this small, narrow window and helped you broaden that. So I won't get into that too much, but there is some strength, and that is another way to get into the zone, is not to be so intertwined in this little narrow focus place, but if you have this big purpose, that's one of the triggers to the zone, as they call it. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Another example I can think of is kind of getting into the zone. I find when I golf, if I go out golfing and my purpose is to score well, I'm going to have a long, terrible day. But I always score my best when I'm out on a golf course out here in Arizona. I'm looking at those mountains and I'm like, man, it's just so beautiful. And all I'm thinking about is how grateful I am to be on a golf course with my friends and how beautiful the day is and it's warm. And I'm really not even thinking about scoring. You know what I mean? I'm just enjoying the day. And, it can correlate to any sport, any time, anywhere in life, is if you're living in gratitude, it kind of takes the stress away. It takes the pressure off, just to be thankful for where you're at that moment and what you're doing, and to see the positives in what you're doing, and not to put that pressure on to score or to whatever. And just, like I said, live in an attitude of gratitude.
That's huge. And that's a huge access to flow to the zone. Super hard for a 13-year-old who wants to get a hit right here and wants to impress his teammates and do all those things. I'm sure super hard for Riley as a professional baseball player when the ticket to the major leagues is performance based. How do you again, besides, do you have any ideas? This is some deep stuff we're getting into right now, but besides the awareness of that, like that is another trigger into the zone is gratitude. Is I love is this visual thing out on a golf course or at a baseball field or whatever, like taking it all in. That's another kind of access trigger point into the zone. How can parents emphasize this? How can parents break this down and say, listen, if you stop worrying about getting hits, you're actually going to get more hits. You're actually going to play with more freedom. It's going to be more fun. And no, the success isn't guaranteed, but the chance of getting there. Like, any thoughts on that? This is some pretty deep mental performance stuff, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but I like incentives. So if your kid likes ice cream, you give them an incentive. I know a lot of parents do it with money, but I like the idea of, hey, if you go out and get one hit today, we go for ice cream. If you get two hits, and now we get a hot fudge sundae or whatever, or and make it a little bit bigger, or just kind of give them something to think of outside of baseball, to a goal to get. I don't know. It's a tough one to kind of get that, but that's how I found, is you find something that they like maybe even more than their sport, and that they, rewards are always great to kind of lock in a good feeling. I can't remember what, there was a golfer that talked about taking your kid to a golf course and just letting them hit some balls, and right in the middle of them enjoying it, take it away from them and stop. Don't keep going until they're like, I'm tired of this. And then take them out to ice cream afterwards and really sink that feeling in of, I can't wait to do that again.
Yeah.
And Riley has a son now, my grandson, Noah. He's just a little bit over 3 years old. And we take him to the batting cages with us. And that's exactly what we do. Is this kid will hit for hours. He's 3 years old. I have to check him for blisters because he won't stop. And so when we tell him, hey, we're done, we're going home now, he'll start crying. He'll throw a fit. He's like, no, Papa, we got to keep going. And then we'll go and we'll give him a reward, and we'll have fun. But it makes him, next time Riley's leaving to go work, he's like, Dad, where are you going? You going to play baseball with Papa? I want to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's cool.
keeping them hungry.
I think we have to be a little bit careful with those, what's called extrinsic rewards.
Yeah.
At some point we want them to develop the intrinsic motivators. Like I do this to become for bigger purposes than Dairy Queen. But I think at early ages, I love that. Like I had another guy on the podcast that talked about how he used to pull his son out a little before he was ready to be done because he wanted him to come back the next day and get back to work. So you're kind of stacking that with some reward system. There's quite a bit of power in that. So that's really cool. But I also liked what you said about just the awareness of it, understanding. The other way to do this, parents, is what you did, Tim, is just asking them, like, when they feel, when they have had success, and you would go out to the mound and ask them about that home run or whatever. Um, when you see them parents have success, do things really well, you really call attention to that and ask them what they were thinking and feeling. I did this with a pitcher yesterday who came and sat down. He had pitched an inning in a scrimmage we had, and he came and sat down, and he pitched really well. And he came and sat down, and, what'd you think, coach? And I'm like, tell me what you were feeling during that. Tell me about your warm up and the thoughts that you were have leading up to this. And then while you were going through the process, and then he did walk a guy, like, how did you respond after walking that guy? How did you reset yourself? And that gets them into this thought pattern of, actually, I wasn't thinking about my arm slot. And it always comes back to, like, I was just free and easy, and these different words that then they can take on and create that zone type of feeling. So that's a really good way to do that too.
Yeah. That's a great point. The other thing I did early on with my kids is, how every player on a team, they have a uniform, and all their uniforms say the same thing, and they're a team. I wanted my kids, because my dad was not a great role model, and I wasn't really excited about my name because it was attached to my dad. But I still was, I wanted to make our name something special again. And so what I would do with my kids growing up is, like, a Christmas present to the whole family. I would have shirts made up. I would go out and get some Under Armour shirts, and I would do a logo of our last name. And there were 5 of us, so we were called the Unroe 5. And so I would make every year, I would make a new logo for the family, but it would always be Unroe 5. And so at Christmas, we're all wearing the same shirts as, like, a same team, to let everybody know, no matter what you're going through, we're with you. We're all a team in this thing, all the way through to the end. And so, and as the kids got older, when they look back on it, they were like, we loved those things. It was so much fun to get those shirts with the last name. We'd wear them to school, and we'd be proud of the Unroe name and all that stuff. And yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't do it for any specific reason, like any mental thing. I just was proud of my family, and I wanted to do, like, a cool logo and whatever. Yeah. It turned out to be something special that the kids still hold on to today.
Love it. Yeah. Awesome, Tim. Well, we'll start wrapping this baby up. Appreciate all your stories. The time, the depth of the conversation we got into is not something that I expected. So I really appreciate that. Is there anything wrapping this baby up, tips, suggestions that you would give to parents as they're raising their athletic kid?
My big thing would be, just remember that your relationship with your kids are going to last a lifetime. Sports have a timeline, and the most important thing to me is that my relationship with my kids is always something that's positive. Always look back on as something that's cherished, and I'm going to do it with my grandkids too. So love on them no matter what. Be a teacher, be a role model. Maybe think about how I treat my kid is how my kid is going to treat my grandkid, and if that's important to you, then, use that. And, and finally, what I would like to say to you, Travis, is thank you for what you're doing here, because I do believe that this is important to be able to get these messages out, because, as a parent, there's no handbook. You know what I mean? We're all trying to do our best, and this is as close to a handbook as we can get for parents who are in situations that we've gone through. So I appreciate your podcast. I appreciate you reaching out to me, and just trying to be a positive role model in this world in sports.
Love it. Well, I think you had lots of great tips, and for sure out there, parents, it's the reason that I'm doing this is to hopefully have some people on here that have been there and done that, and have had some trip ups and mess ups along the way, and have had some people to get us back on track. And so, yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing everything. Thanks for the kind words, and all your knowledge and information that you've shared. Really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure doing it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. If you'll just hang on here 1 second, this thing takes about 2 seconds to upload, and then I'll cut you out of here. Thanks so much, Tim.
Yeah, Travis, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Please be sure to like, follow, and especially share the podcast. If you want more information on strategies that you can use to help optimize your son or daughter's athletic experience, please check out my book, Parenting Athletic Kids. It's available on Amazon. Thanks again, and we'll be back with another podcast really soon.